What is up, guys? Welcome to my review for Crisis on Infinite Earths Hour 2, or Part 2, which is also Batwoman Season 1, Episode 9. This episode is so much better than any other Batwoman episode, it's ridiculous. I mean, just look at the IMDb page with the ranking of all the episodes. This episode has a 9 out of 10 right now, which is lower than the first part, and not exactly as high as I would expect from a Crisis on Infinite Earths episode. However, just look at the rest of the episodes. Literally every other episode is 7 and lower, or actually 6.6 and lower, emphasis on the lower. So this episode is way better than any other episode of Batwoman, and even though it is, I don't think, nearly as good as the first part, it certainly is still a very good episode with a lot of interesting things, some great action scenes, and even a couple TV shows and movies, universes being added to the Arrowverse. So with that in mind, let's begin the review for Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 2. So the episode begins with Sarah, Kara, and Kate giving a toast for Oliver, even though it's really just Sarah because Kate barely knew Oliver. Kara is more worried about Earth 38, and Barry isn't there because he's not accepting Oliver's death, and that goes for Mia as well, which is definitely in their characters. I think it definitely makes a lot of sense. For Barry specifically, it seems like that in this episode he's really mad that Oliver died instead of him, which I feel like Oliver would be the same thing. If Barry ended up dying while Oliver survived, Oliver would be very angry. I mean, you saw in the last episode that Barry died instead of him. It really shows how selfless these people are, and I really hope both of them end up being Paragons. I mean, there's no way they won't, but I mean, at this point, there are only 3 unnamed Paragons left. I just hope 2 of them are the Flash and Green Arrow. So then Harbinger goes to get the Wave Rider from Earth 74 with the McRory of Earth 74. So basically we got this whole new hero from another universe, this doppelganger of McRory, that I had no idea they were going to use in this episode, which really, I think it's a good time to bring up. In these first 2 episodes, they've used the concept of the multiverse a lot better than I expected them to, because previously the crossovers, even the multiversal focusing ones, didn't really focus on as many universes as I expected, and up until recently, there weren't really that many universes in the multiverse that have been explored, but now in this crossover, we have gotten like dozens of universes, or at least a dozen universes, not only mentioned, but focused on, and people went there in this crossover, and in this episode, there's like 6 or 7 different universes that the characters just go to. It really, I think, emphasizes the title, Crisis on Infinite Earths, a lot better than I expected, and here with Harbinger going to Earth 74, it's just a random universe where there's a Wave Rider, where the Legend's retired, but Mick Rory is still there, and Leonard Snart is an AI. It's really interesting, and I think they use the concept of the multiverse way better than I expected, and overall very well. So then, the Monitor tells the Justice League about the Paragons. During this scene, John Kent, the son of Clark and Lois, interrupts while crying, which is very funny. I mean, they released this as a sneak peek, and when I watched that, it was hilarious. So when I did watch the scene again in the episode, it wasn't as funny because it wasn't the first time I saw it. However, when I did see it originally, it was a really funny scene. But then the Monitor actually does tell the Justice League about the Paragons, including the fact that he went back in time to get the Book of Destiny because Oliver destroyed it in the last crossover, and now he got it back. So I guess the Monitor can time travel, which I don't think they've ever established truly before that he can straight up time travel, but it does seem he probably can time travel beyond the Crisis because like Flash tried to time travel in Season 6. There are different rules there, but this is when we learn that both Kara and Sarah are Paragons. Kara is the Paragon of Hope, while Sarah is the Paragon of Destiny. It is, I think, fitting for the main characters of 2 of the shows of the Arrowverse to be Paragons. Then we learn later that Batwoman is as well, which I'll get to later in the video, but it's pretty clear they're making the main characters of the shows the 7 Paragons, where there's probably, I mean, you got White Canary, Supergirl, and Batwoman already confirmed, probably also Green Arrow and the Flash. Then you also add the Superman from Superman Returns and previous movies, and that's 6. The 7th one, I'm guessing, will probably either be Black Lightning, or it seems like they're hinting at, or they've hinted it from behind the scenes, that it's Ryan Choi. Regardless, 5 of them are probably going to be the 5 main characters of the 5 main Arrowverse shows, with a couple other of them like Superman and Ryan Choi, or maybe Black Lightning, who is one of the Arrowverse show's main characters. Regardless, though, it seems like that is what they're focusing on, which I definitely think is very fitting. So as Kara and Sarah learn that they're Paragons, and Superman sets out to find one of the Paragons, the Paragon of Truth, which is another Kryptonian somewhere in the multiverse, we get a scene where Supergirl is reunited with Lex Luthor, learning that Lex Luthor is alive. The Monitor also explains why he can't restore Oliver's life, because he is being drained because of the Anti-Monitor, which is actually exactly what happened in the comic. The stronger the Anti-Monitor gets, the more worlds he destroys, the weaker the Monitor gets, to the point where he can actually be killed, and spoiler alert, in the comics, he is killed by Harbinger, who's being controlled by the Anti-Monitor, which it does seem like we're getting in the show. Regardless, though, this is a pretty good scene. I do have a problem with the episode when it comes to Lex Luthor specifically, that I think this is probably as good a time as any to mention. Lex Luthor had no screen time whatsoever with the Earth 38 version of Superman. Okay, that's not technically true. They were in a scene together, but they didn't get a single line together at all, which is very disappointing. The rivalry between them on Lex Luthor's side in Supergirl Season 4 was so great, and to see that where they were actually on screen together would have been just so cool, but they didn't get a single line together in this episode. And while Lex Luthor is reappearing in at least one more episode in this crossover, and I'm guessing also more than that, they didn't really get much screen time in this episode, which is a little disappointing, specifically since how Superman-oriented this episode actually is. Regardless, when it comes to this scene specifically, I do like the explanation for why Monitor can't bring Oliver back, because it does fit the comics, and it's not just some flimsy explanation that the Monitor is getting weaker. It's actually what happened in the comics, so that makes sense. And while Lex Luthor not having any screen time, or at least lines with Superman, is disappointing, or at least that version of Superman, this scene where Supergirl learns that Lex Luthor is alive is actually a pretty good one. Right after that, Harbinger starts hearing voices in her head. We actually got a scene earlier where she kind of got a little disoriented when looking at the Book of Destiny. This all leads to the Anti-Monitor reveal, which I will get to at the end of this review. But then she also walks in onto Lex Luthor, and in this moment, Lex Luthor becomes the main antagonist of this episode. The last episode were the Shadow Demons. This episode was Lex Luthor. Maybe the next episode will be somebody else as well, with maybe episode 4 and 5 being the Anti-Monitor who's the main antagonist, because here it's Lex Luthor, and he's a great villain. He's one of the best villains in the Arrowverse overall, so he definitely made for a very good villain and main antagonist for this episode. So then Barry and Iris have a talk, and Iris is convinced that maybe because Oliver died, where the Monitor didn't think he would die in that way, maybe the Monitor is wrong about Barry. And yeah, that might be true, because I don't think Barry's going to die. He has a whole TV show, a whole season coming out after the crisis, so that kind of spoils that he won't end up dying. However, this scene definitely seems more focused on Barry not accepting Oliver's death, which, like I said earlier in the episode, it definitely fits the character very much. But this actually turns out to be his main storyline in the episode, which is a little bit unexpected, because I definitely thought the storyline where they try to get Oliver back would mostly focus on Constantine and Mia, and then Diggle would join as well. Turns out also Sarah and Barry have a very big role in this storyline, which from now on in the video I will go storyline by storyline, because this episode is a lot more storyline oriented than the last one. The last episode just felt like a whole movie where it was only one storyline, which I think almost always makes for the best episodes. But this time around, while this is probably one of the main reasons this episode isn't really as good, it is more storyline oriented, where there's the Batman storyline, the Superman storyline, and the Green Arrow storyline. And I will go storyline by storyline, starting with the Batman storyline with Kara and Kate going to try to recruit the Bat of the Future. So in the storyline, Kara and Kate go after the Bat of the Future in Earth 99, who is supposed to be the Courage, or the Paragon of Courage, and a Bruce Wayne who's a lot older. Now, the number Earth 99, with basically every new TV show that is added to the Arrowverse, all the Earths are definitely usually numbered after the year they began. This is a little bit different because it is an original character, or it's at least a new character, but Earth 99 seems like it's a reference to Batman Beyond, which is a TV show that focuses on an older Bruce Wayne, more so the successor of Batman, Terry McGinnis, but also an older Bruce Wayne, which debuted in 1999. So Kate and Kara go to Wayne Manor on Earth 99, which, by the way, is already we can see is different from the Kingdom Come universe, even though this Batman is at least modeled and is designed after the Kingdom Come Batman. So I definitely expected this to be on the same universe as the Brandon Routh Superman, but that didn't end up being the case. Regardless, though, they go to Wayne Manor. They meet Luke Fox of Earth 99, who's not wearing a shirt the entirety of the time in this episode, or he is, but it's completely open. It's a little bit weird. I don't see the inclusion of the character in this episode is very unusual, and I guess they really just did it because they thought, you know, we're paying the actor already because he's a series regular on Batwoman, and this is an episode of Batwoman, so they're anyway paying the actor for this episode, might as well use him. So yeah, that does definitely make sense. But anyway, they go into Wayne Manor, they meet Bruce Wayne, and this is the introduction of like some version of Bruce Wayne in the Arrowverse for the first time ever. And he's played by Kevin Conroy, who, if you don't know, voices Batman in Batman the Animated Series, Justice League Unlimited, all of the Arkham games so far, and a whole slew of animated movies. He's never played a Bruce Wayne in live action before, only in animation, where he is the most beloved Batman actor ever, probably, as his voice is the embodiment of Bruce Wayne. But now he finally gets to play him in live action, and as it turns out, he's playing a murderous and kind of evil version of Bruce Wayne, which is definitely very unexpected, and honestly, I do really like that they went that route, because Kevin Conroy's never really done that before. In fact, Batman is almost never a villain. They always, if there's a universe where a character becomes a villain, it's always Superman. That is until the recent Dark Knight's Metal storyline, where there's like several evil versions of Batman, and this kind of felt like that, and honestly, it makes me think that maybe they're going to do something with that. Maybe this evil version of Bruce Wayne, who's from an alternate universe, can become maybe the Red Death, maybe some other version of one of those evil Batmen. But since the Flash has been setting up the Red Death since season 5, he's probably the #1 villain people want to see on the show at this point, and we haven't gotten a speedster villain in a while. Maybe this version of Bruce, played by Kevin Conroy, like in the comics, can become the Red Death and the main villain of some season of the Flash. I think that sounds awesome, and while he did die in the storyline, there is a couple ways to bring him back, specifically with the Speed Force, which has never brought people back from the dead, but it can like help him heal from his injuries right now. So I do think that that is something they should definitely do, and bring back Kevin Conroy, who could be the main villain of a season of The Flash, as the Red Death. Anyway, though, seeing Kevin Conroy as Batman is definitely really cool, or at least hearing him as Batman is always cool. Whenever we see this character where he's talking, but we don't see his face or his mouth move, it just sounds so much like Batman, like not only the Batman we've seen before, but just the Batman character from the comics, from media overall. It just sounds so much like Batman should sound, which, that's because it's Kevin Conroy. Regardless, though, this version of Batman is definitely really cool. The fact that Batman finally debuted in the Arrowverse, even though it is an alternate version and an evil version, it is still really, really cool, and this storyline overall, I think, was definitely a good one. Maybe not as amazing as I maybe expected it to be, as it was a little underwhelming at times, specifically with, if this is the death of this version of Batman, his death was a little bit underwhelming. Regardless, though, it was definitely a pretty good storyline overall, and I think that this version of Batman, with the fact that he has the Kingdom Come suit, the fact that he fought Superman, who he said he always listened to flags, like in the Dark Knight Returns universe, and then also probably some sort of Dark Knights Metal Batman. It's definitely a very original take on Batman, with several different incarnations of the character being molded into this one. So at the end of the storyline, Ray uses his Paragon detector to find out that Kate is the Paragon of Courage, and it turns out the Monitor knew this entire time. He sent Kate and Kara to go to Earth 99 to discover that Kate is the Paragon of Courage, which they didn't really. It was really just the Paragon detector that discovered this, which makes me question, what was the point of this storyline, other than having Kevin Conroy as Bruce Wayne, which was cool. What was the point of Kara and Kate going to Earth 99 if they wasn't even in the storyline where they discovered that Kate was one of the Paragons? And when it comes to Kate actually being a Paragon, I have no problem with this, but only because she's one of the main characters that makes Batwoman, I think, applicable to being a Paragon, even though she's very new to being a superhero or a vigilante. She hasn't had any feats that would make her a Paragon, and she's not exactly a good character, so all of those things are the things that would suggest she wouldn't be a Paragon. Regardless, though, she is one of the main characters, so it doesn't bother me as much as it would. The final scene, though, with Kara and Kate talk is definitely good, as Kate, it turns out that she has kryptonite after Bruce warned her that there's no hope or something. I think this might be teasing that there will be a fight between Batwoman and Supergirl in the vein of Batman versus Superman, which honestly, if that's going to happen in the next couple parts, I'm actually pretty excited for that. So then there's the Superman storyline, in which Clark, Lois, and Iris go to 3 different universes, or at least Clark and Lois go to 3 of them. First of which is Earth 75, universe where it turns out Lex went there and just straight up killed Superman, which the number Earth 75 is a reference to the Death of Superman storyline, which came out in issue 75 of the Superman comic that was coming out at that time. And while it wasn't Doomsday who killed Superman here, this obviously is a homage to that, specifically the imagery of the cape on a stick blowing in the wind, and also Lois holding Superman like that. It is all an homage to the death of Superman. Then they go to Earth 167, but as it turns out, this is the Smallville universe, and in this scene, the whole Smallville TV show, that's 10 seasons of television, plus a couple volumes of comics, all become canon into the Arrowverse's multiverse with just this cameo. Okay, I just looked it up. It turns out Earth 167 is a reference to one of the producers on Smallville, Al Gough, who was born in 1967. So just get rid of the number 9, you have 167, which is, I don't know, a little bit of a stretch to name a whole universe after. I think they could have done Earth 2001, which they have never gone over 1,000, even though there are literally infinite amount of universes, which isn't a really big complaint. Like I said earlier, they're using the multiverse well, but considering Smallville came out in 2001, and they can't exactly do Earth 1 because they already have that. It should have been Earth 2001 in my opinion, or if they're going for Al Gough, why not just make it Earth 1967? Anyway though, that really it doesn't really have any bearing on this episode's quality whatsoever, so let's move on. Anyway though, Clark, Lois, and Iris go to Earth 167 and go to the Smallville universe. So apparently people are liking the Smallville cameo, which is definitely good. I think this would have been way cooler if we didn't know it was coming. I mean, just imagine they go to the Smallville universe, we don't know what's going to happen, but then Tom Welling just shows up at Smallville as Clark, which I know is basically impossible, and also if they want to draw in more viewers, this definitely would accomplish that. But I just think imagine if we didn't know this was happening. Regardless though, Lex shows up, he gets rid of Clark, Lois, and Iris, and we learn that Clark actually gave up his powers, which apparently is similar to the storyline Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, where Superman used gold kryptonite to get rid of his powers and live a peaceful life. This is similar, and I've said this so many times already, I'm not exactly a huge fan of Smallville, as in I've never really gotten into it, but apparently the fans are liking this conclusion to the Smallville universe, and if that's the case, then I think they did a good job here. So then Clark, Lois, and Iris go to Earth 96, which again apparently is different from Earth 99, which I definitely expected these characters to be in the same universe. Anyway, Earth 96, the number 96, is a nod to the Kingdom Come storyline, which came out in 1996, which is pretty cool, even though like 5 of the movies that came out in this universe, because apparently they mentioned Superman 3, or the events of Superman 3 in this episode, where Superman said he fought himself previously. So that's 5 movies, which have nothing to do with Kingdom Come, and it's only in this crossover where he's wearing that costume and has a similar backstory, and they name the universe after that. Again, no bearing on the quality of this episode whatsoever, I just wanted to mention that. Anyway, though, this is the return of this version of Superman after 13 years of never being on screen. He's been in 5 movies previously. Only one of them was he played by Brandon Routh, but I gotta say, seeing him as Brandon Routh again, or being played by Brandon Routh again, is so cool, and honestly a little bit nostalgic. The movie came out when I was 5 years old, and I don't think I watched it for a couple years after that, but regardless, it was definitely a movie that, looking back now, is really nostalgic. So seeing this version of Brandon Routh again is really cool, specifically since I do like Tyler Hoechlin's Superman, but I think Brandon Routh is the perfect casting for Superman. I think he looks more like Superman than any other actor who's ever played him. He feels more like Superman than any other actor who's ever played him, and seeing him again on screen, especially in this costume, which looks amazing, is really cool, especially also with the Superman theme in the background, like the mix between the Superman theme and the new Arrowverse version of the Superman theme, which I really like both of those themes a lot. One of them is more iconic, but I do like both of them, honestly, practically equally, and that honestly sounds and looks amazing. So this whole storyline, the Superman storyline, is easily my favorite part of this episode, not only because we went from universes to universes, seeing the Smallville universe, but also because we saw this version of Superman, and it doesn't even stop there. We do get more from this storyline. We learn that his backstory, the Superman, is obviously very similar to the Kingdom Come version, where in Kingdom Come, Daily Planet was gas attacked by the Joker, later, and in here we see that he says some reject from Gotham, which maybe they couldn't mention the Joker, they weren't allowed to, but that definitely is the Joker. But also Lois died, which in this universe 13 years later is now his wife. Also Perry died and Jimmy died, but it doesn't seem like his son Jason died, who's mentioned later in the crossover and in this episode. But then Lex Luthor shows up and makes the two Supermen fight each other. I should say that even just seeing the two Supermen like teaming up was so cool, like when the two Supermen very quickly put on their costumes, again with the music in the background. It was an awesome moment, but this fight is probably the best part of this episode overall. There are like maybe one or two shots that look pretty low budget, but it definitely seems like for the most part they poured the entirety of this episode's budget into this fight. Apart from those couple shots, this honestly looks like it's straight out of a movie, and while it is a little bit shorter and definitely, like I said, cheaper looking than, say, the Man of Steel fights or any other Superman fight we've seen in movies, the fact that this is on a CW show which has such a small budget and they pulled this off as well as they did, it's honestly awesome. And this fight is by far my favorite part of this episode, as it's legitimately incredibly impressive, incredibly well done, and not to mention just seeing these two Supermen on screen together, especially how these are probably my two favorite versions of Superman ever. It's just so awesome to see. Anyway, though, Clark, Iris, and Lois do stop Lex. They also managed to snap Earth 96 Clark out of it, which is a little different from how the Book of Destiny has worked previously, which I guess you could count as a continuity error, but whatever. I guess it doesn't really bother me that much, because right after that, a little bit after that, we do get a scene where Brandon Routh talks to himself, or Clark Kent from Earth 96 and Ray Palmer from Earth 1 talk to themselves or talk to each other, and it's obviously really cool, especially since Clark mentions his son Jason, like I said earlier, who I guess at this point would be Superboy, because Superman Returns, while coming out in 2006, took place way earlier than that, like in the 60s or something, or no, in the 80s. I don't know why I said 60s, in the 80s or 90s or something. So at this point, Jason should be an adult, so maybe he's Superboy in his universe, and maybe in the future we get to see him in a future crossover or some sort of expansion on this universe. But then there's the Green Arrow storyline, which I gotta say, not my favorite storyline whatsoever. There are a lot of kind of not plot holes, but character inconsistencies and weird choices they made with this storyline that I think drags down the episode quite a bit. So in a trailer breakdown, I definitely expected, or I mentioned that I expected Constantine to help bring Oliver back, but this is not the way I expected. They just straight up use a Lazarus pit, with Mia and Barry just being all for bringing Oliver back, with Sarah being initially against it, but then for it in the end, which is a kind of against her character, especially with her arc in Season 2 of Legends of Tomorrow, which a lot of it revolved around her choosing to not save her sister Laurel, and in the end being okay with the death, or at least getting past it. Sarah bringing Oliver back with the Lazarus pit, I think it goes against her character quite a lot, which is a character inconsistency we see in this storyline. Anyway, Constantine finds some Lazarus pits in the multiverse. Mia, Constantine, Sarah, and Barry all go to Earth 18 with Oliver, and Sarah and Mia fight Jonah Hex, which this is not what I expected to come out of Jonah Hex in this crossover. I definitely expected him to, like in the comics, have a role where there are time periods that are brought together, and he from the past is brought to the present day, but also he is a part of the defense against the shadow demons and protecting the quantum tower on Earth 1. Instead, he's just a Jonah Hex from Earth 18 who has one scene where he fights Sarah, and if this is the extent of his role in this crossover, then color me disappointed. But then Oliver just straight up comes back from the dead as a feral beast like Sarah was in Season 4. However, this time around, unlike in Season 4 of Our, Constantine was not able to get Oliver's soul back because the antimatter wave. This is probably where we're going to see John, along with Diggle and Mia, go to Purgatory or wherever Oliver is, or maybe in Oliver's mind, to get his soul back. Although actually his soul wouldn't be in his mind, it would be probably in Purgatory. Regardless, that's probably where we're going to see that. Oliver this way is brought back from the dead, or his body is brought back, but in episode 3, I'm guessing, that's where or maybe 3 and 4, that's where we're going to see his soul being brought back, and I did make a trailer breakdown, which for the most part is still a little bit accurate to how I think his soul is being brought back, and his body is something completely different. So if you want to check out that video, link will be in the top right corner of this one. And the episode ends with Harbinger being brought or transported right to the Anti-Monitor, and this is his first episode. This is his debut in the Arrowverse. He looks really cool, he looks very threatening, and though we did hear his voice previously in those episodes before the Crisis with that Nash scene, which, side note, where was Pariah in this episode? He appeared in the end of the last episode, and they could have explained where he was in this episode, but they never did. He will have a role in the next one, but it was weird that he didn't appear in this one. Regardless, though, the Anti-Monitor's debut was awesome. He looks really threatening, and what we're seeing here with Harbinger being brought to the Anti-Monitor is, again, like I said in my review for the last episode, more comic accurate than I expected. What happened in the comic is that, like I said earlier, the Anti-Monitor grew stronger, the Monitor grew weaker, and the Anti-Monitor took control of Harbinger and forced her to kill the Monitor, which, by the looks of it, is what's happening in this crossover. So in conclusion, I do think that this episode is nowhere near as good as the first one. It has some great things about it, like the Harbinger storyline, which was short, was pretty good, especially with the Anti-Monitor's debut at the end, and I absolutely love the Superman storyline, which that storyline carries this episode so hard. The problem with this episode is the fact that it's so storyline-oriented, where all the characters are spread out over the course of the storylines, which was necessary to push the actual story of the crossover forward, but because of that, I do think it's a little bit weaker than the last episode, which was just one, or actually two storylines, but it was mostly just one big storyline. But there's also the fact that the Green Arrow storyline was a little bit boring for the most part, and also, other than the two Supermen, none of the heroes wear their costumes, and also the fact that they don't wear the costumes and they're not all together. This episode just doesn't feel like a Justice League like the last one did. It also feels like it's lower budget, it's more storyline oriented, it's just not anywhere near as good. I'm hoping and praying that this is the worst episode of the crossover so far, because while it is definitely a very good episode that accomplishes a lot, like introducing Smallville's universe and the Superman Returns universe, and also, like I said, I love the Superman storyline, it is, I think, way worse than the last episode, and I'll give it a 9 out of 10, but let me know what you thought about the episode in the comments down below, and if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.